Welcome to the Nikki Show. And as always, we would love to motivate and uplift you with amazing stories that should keep you going. And so it is Women's Month. The theme, the UN theme, is Accelerate Action. And so also important for us to focus on leading women, trailblazers, and who have inspiring and successful stories that will put a smile on your face. I am joined today by Dr. Maria Mafunga Kimu. And Dr. Maria Mafunga Kimu is an entrepreneur. She is, of course, as the title says, a doctor with a PhD in education. And also, I will tell you this, she's an entrepreneur and owns a group of schools. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you for having me today.
And I've got to say, when I was looking at your educational qualifications, I said, this woman has not been resting. This woman has been continuously. So you've got so many diplomas, your undergrad's master's degree, and of course your PhD. What has been your drive?
Okay, I'll tell you a story. I was born to very old parents who had thought they were not going to have any more children. My mom, at the time I was born, was 60 years old. And my brother, the eldest then, is somebody who had done upper six. They would call that Form 6. And I grew up, my mom would always talk about my brother, mwana wangu Form 6. So I knew from a very early age that to make my parents happy, I needed to do well in school. And thank God I grew up as a very intelligent, sharp child, so much that every year from the time I was in grade 1 up to the time I was in Form 4, my mom would come and would be happy at every prize giving day. I would scoop prizes. So I knew that was one of my strengths. I had that intellectual stamina, and I wanted to do better than my Form 6 brother. So I said to my mom once, I want to go all the way to Form 7. When I was much younger, I didn't know that there was no Form 7. So that has been my drive. It was about my parents, but God bless their souls, they are not here anymore. But I still knew that I needed to pursue education as far as it could take me. But I'm going to stop here. I'm not going to go through to becoming a professor. I am done. I'm done.
You've done your part.
Indeed, I have.
So I look at, I'm just listening to your story. Your mom was 60 when she had you.
Yes.
How did everybody else take it? Were you told the story?
I'm told she was, okay, my mom was selling sadza at, they call it Pa William in Masasa. So this one day, just as her normal routine, she just felt that she had waters breaking, and she didn't understand because she did not know that she was pregnant.
Oh dear.
So she was taken to Harare Hospital, and then it was then my dad was told he was working as a cook for a white couple, and he was phoned and told that his wife was having a baby. And he said, I don't think you've got the right man. My wife can't be pregnant, and my wife isn't pregnant. So when I was born, everybody else, I was like a miracle child because no one was expecting a little baby. And of course, my mom had to go through a cesarean section. For 3 months, she was not seen or heard from because she was having to take care of this little child and this premature baby who had come without anybody expecting her. So everybody, there were mixed feelings, of course, because there were adult children in the family, and some might have been embarrassed to say, Amevenyu, they've got a child at that old age. But I became everybody's sweetheart, really. My brothers, my sisters, and as God would have it, I was then raised later on by my siblings because my parents had passed on.
Well, I think that your siblings have played a pivotal part in who you have become.
Yes.
I think I'm going to fast forward a bit to you own a group of schools now.
Right.
Right. So at some point you were employed, you were an employee. Let's talk about that transition from being an employee to being an employer.
Okay, Nikki, my story is not a straightforward one. And perhaps within that story, we ought to know that you don't always know how you're going to end up. When my brother, my eldest brother, died in 2002, and I just graduated from the University of Zimbabwe.
Sorry for that.
For my first degree. Apparently in my family, I had been that person who had gone through education better than the others. Like any family, really, we are not gifted the same. So upon his death, there was a requirement for somebody to fill up it filled the gap. So I found myself at a very young age, at the age of 22, being a CEO of a company that was doing networking and IT. So I became a CEO from the age of 22. And I was running an organization, Systems Management International and Technology for You, the two companies, but doing the same thing with different clientele like Anglo-American, Unki Holdings, Mercury Platinum Mine, Arcturus Mine, those big companies, Iron Duke Pirates. They were outsourcing IT services from my brother's company. So I found myself at the helm of a very large organization responsible for IT systems for very performing those blue chip companies that were actually listed. So I was in that situation for about 2 years. Up the time I was about 24.
Tell me something. Was this your career path? Like growing up age, you said that I was going to focus on IT.
No.
So it was a transition.
That's right.
How did you adapt?
At some point, I'd go into meetings with a consultant. Somebody would have to interpret to me what was being said, because IT is a specialist industry, really. You need to understand terminology for you to be able to relate. So at some point, I had to take a consultant along with me. So my main concern was to protect the interest of my brother. So I worked for SMI and Abitech and Technology for You as one, which were the three companies providing services to the companies that I mentioned earlier. So I was pushed into the deep end right from the start. But at some point, I had to leave that job because there were issues, when there is a deceased person, etc.
Yeah.
And then I found myself starting my first business, because it had been 3 years since I had graduated, and my peers had been employed either by the Reserve Bank or banks because I'd done economics. And they were already employed. And I felt like it was too late for me to be writing an application letter to say, "Dear sir, I hereby apply." So what I did, I made use of what was available to me, the clients. So I started my own company called Master Business Solutions. Ma for Maria, Star for Stan, my late brother, in his honor. So it was Master Business Solutions that was I then went back into my actual field of accounting, business, and things like that. So I began to work with that, and also providing stationery and computer hardware and things to the same clients we had been providing IT services to. So the same clients became my clients. There is a power in association. So whenever you make connections with people, you keep them because you never know.
Then and your social network.
Indeed, they became my stepping stone. So that was the beginning. It was about Master Business Solutions. But in 2008, you might remember 2008, we had such inflation.
We all remember 2008.
Such bad inflation that I would import some of my things. So by the time my goods arrived, you'll find that the price I'd quoted will probably be the same as I could not even buy back my own goods because of inflation. So I had to abandon Master Business Solutions and everything that came with it. And then that is when I went into education.
Why education?
Okay, at that point now, I had a child, my firstborn, Chiesa, who then became my very first student, and I was the first teacher. I had a child, and inflation was beating me up badly, but I've always been someone who is drawn to finer things of life. So I decided to take my child into an ECD center. She was 3 years old. And when I went around different schools around the place then, I realized that I couldn't afford the fees by a long shot. It was now in USD. You remember the days when USD, people would go on combis for about $3 for the trip that would ordinarily now cost like 50 cents.
Yeah.
So the prices were so high for ECD centers of the caliber that I was looking at. I've always wanted the good things. So I realized I cannot afford it and decided, why don't I just turn my own house into a school and give my child?
Just like that?
Just like
what
that.
What happens to regulations? What happens to registering? What happens to the requirements from the ministry? Okay,
so you see, when you are wired for business, you need to be you don't need to be afraid of risk. The minute you are thinking like that, you always be exactly where you were yesterday. So while I am, yes, aware that I was even then, that there are rules, there are regulations, the important thing is to take the first step. And the first step was to create the school. And I was already at school with my child. So I became the teacher and she became the student. So my daughter is your complexion. So I told her to now start calling me Auntie Maria instead of calling me Mama. And I took the lounge suite into the bedroom, and our lounge became the first classroom. So she became my first student.
At the end of the year, how many students did you have?
After 4 months, I didn't have many. So what I did is I went around the flats because I was staying in Avondale. So there are so many flats there. I went around the flats and asked the gardeners and the maids there to give me their children. So I went to see my sister who does uniforms, and I asked her to make some little uniforms, which I gave out for free. And I gave out to these students and my daughter too.
And
So
were they paying fees?
no, they came for free. Sometimes you need to dig deep before you go up.
What was the motivation behind, let me just take the gardeners and the housekeepers' kids for now?
Okay, so you see, when people were coming in for inquiries, half the time they'll say, but there aren't many kids here. There is nobody. And as long as, you see, naturally people are laggards. Most of the people, all of us, myself included, we are laggards. By that I mean that we don't usually jump at something new. We wait and we have a wait and see attitude. So as long as somebody else has not trusted that brand, we are not usually keen to be the first ones. So as long as there is an impression that somebody else has trusted this person with their child, then the next thing I knew, boom, I had my first student, and she was colored, and I was excited. You know, being someone who grew up in the ghetto, a colored student meant like, wow, so okay.
Doc, get her in the review.
Tafara chayo, kujecha uko. Kutafara mabhuku kuma-70 pamwana ndichepayando pandakadzidza grade 1 to 7.
So you've got your colored student there. Did you ever have any brushes with the law?
Of course I did. You don't run a business which has a regulatory authority and nobody comes your way. They do come. But what I'm happy about the industry, year education, and even the policy and the acts is such that they respect people who partner with them in education. At best, they ask you to regularize your operations because, of course, we need to create an environment that's safe for the students and safe for everybody, and then you can produce good students.
So now you own a group of schools, one of the biggest schools. This should be Mashonaland East, is that right?
Correct.
Right. Surely, a young girl from Tafara has one of the biggest schools in Mashonaland East. Where did you get the money from?
Okay, great. So having started my school in a house, I decided to then open a branch in Jama Falls. And I started that school again in another house, right? It was an upcoming suburb. I was building a house that side, and I realized, here's my opportunity. There are no schools. So I started a school again in a house, 10 houses down the line from the house I was building in Jama Falls. Then as I was busy with my illegal school, naturally the law enforcement agents caught up with me. So this one time I'm phoned, I'm told, oh, somebody has been here and they said you should come to Rua police station for running an illegal school. So I knew, in today's language you'd say changa chai chai. Right. So I proceeded to go to Rua police station where I thought it was just going to be a conversation, but I realized, okay, it's more than that. So I was actually arrested. And I was told it was a Friday, and you know how the police like to get you on a Friday so that the whole weekend you're there, and then you can go to court on Monday. So as I was there on Saturday morning, I spent the night. On Saturday morning, what do they call the chief inspector, the highest authority at a police station, he came out and said to his officers, that lady looks decent. She spent the night. What's her crime? And then they're like, oh, apparently this lady has got an illegal school. He's like, oh, okay, please bring her out. I want to talk to her. And then I went into his office, asked me to sit on the floor like any person who is in a cell. They naturally, that's the treatment. I sat on the floor and he said, tell me your story. And I told him I am keen to actually regularize, except the requirement for an actual school is 3.5 hectares. That is the minimum requirement for an actual school in terms of the laws of the land. So the requirement was for me now to regularize, but by regularizing, I needed to have land, which land I didn't have. So he said to me, I need you to put it in writing as to how you're going to proceed, otherwise your school will be closed.
Okay.
So this was about September of 2011. And he had said to me, by January, I want you to come back to me with a plan. Otherwise, we've given you ample notice to finish off the year, and thereafter you cannot say we did not tell you. Because if you were to go to court on Monday, you'll still be convicted of a crime. But we are considering the fact that you mean well. However, law is what it is, not what it ought to be.
Of course.
So I found myself in a situation where I needed
3.5 hectares.
3.5 hectares. So thank God, in Damafor's area, there were 8 designated stands for a school. And the first thing I did when I left the police station the next morning, I made my way to Damafor's investments. Number 2, Union Avenue. And I was excited. I thought it was going to be really easy. Oh, I might as well lease land from them. And they said, no, we are selling. And the cheapest they had then was 937,000 USD.
US dollars.
Yes.
937,000
Correct.
US dollars.
Correct. So I'm like,
how much did you have in the bank?
Nothing. I didn't have much in the bank. But I did have something in another bank. The bank of faith, if you like. Because in this life, you put everything in the trolley, right? You go into the shop of life. You put everything you want into your trolley. And you push it to the till of life. And then you're supposed to take out your card of faith. And you swipe according to your faith. So I went to Damafor's. And they said, go and view. And of course, I went to view. I went and I viewed 3 stands, but I had nothing in the bank. Eventually, I came back and I said, the cheapest property is Rocky, so I can't have that one. Can I buy this one? The one where we currently are. And the gentlemen are in business and they're like happy, they have a client. Okay, great, please go. The minimum we want is half of that. And half of that, was 1,078,000 USD. So I said, okay. I walked away and I thought, they are crazy. 1,078,000. Where?
So let me get this right. You're saying that a certain piece or fraction of the land was 900 and something thousand. Then combined, half of that was about 1 million.
No. They were designated properties for schools.
Okay.
One of those, there were 8 of them. One of them is the one that was the cheapest at 937,000 because it was rocky.
Okay.
If you're going to develop anything there, you needed to blast those rocks. So I decided against buying that particular one and decided rather to get the next best for me or the next cheapest, but which was on flat ground, which needed little, if any, blasting whatsoever. So I then chose a property worth 1,078,000 USD, but I had no money. So I went back to them and I started asking, I proposed to probably have a lease arrangement, maybe for 5 years, but that was turned down. I went through to banks. I can count up to 10 banks, and nobody was willing to lend against an idea, which is also something we need to look at, because it's not every idea that flops. I don't know, if it were up to me, I would have a situation where women can have their ideas be bankable. Because now, every other day, I have a bank asking me to bank with them. But when I needed my idea to be bankable, nobody was willing to lend.
Interesting. So there you go. You need about $1 million.
Yes.
You have nothing in the bank?
Nothing in the bank.
Okay.
So I went away and having negotiated, they said, point is, we want money. $500,000, maybe you may not be able to get that, but bring something. So I held them to their word. The word was something. So I went away and I sold the property. I put in the newspaper. Then we would put adverts in the paper. I sold my property number 39 Bawara Street in Sengeza 2 for 18,000. Put it in a little plastic bag, your bread plastics. And I made my way to number 2 Union Avenue to Damafor's Investments. And then I said, I'm back, I brought some money. And they're like, oh, they were happy. And I
Brought the money counter?
Oh, yes. And they were preparing, of course, the agreement of sale. And once they were done, they did the amortization, etc. And only when they were done, at the point of signing, I said, but the deposit you've put there is not what I have. They thought I brought the $500,000. I have
$18,000.
They're like, what?
Of $1 million.
78, yes. So
hold on, I think we need to just take a moment there to breathe and relax and understand that what is needed is $1 million US.
Correct.
In a bag, in a paper bag for bread, there's $18,000.
Correct.
What did you do?
Of course, there was a moment of ridicule, so to speak. You know how people think you're crazy. They think you are unrealistic. They went outside. I could hear people talking the hallway. I'm like,
possibly laughing.
Exactly. Yeah, but I sat there and I was calm and I was composed, and I knew this was a do or die. So I needed to sit there and see it through.
What made you go with $18,000? What gave you the motivation? What gave you the assurance, the drive?
Something. Go and bring something. Something. And I knew that by saying something, that the ambiguity in the word something meant that God had already spoken to me to say, look, you may not come empty-handed, but no matter how small, a way was supposed to be found. There had to be a way. Otherwise, they would have said, you know our terms, we want $500,000. They would have never used the word something.
So there you go. They're in the corridor. They're talking about your 18,000. And then what happens?
Then they came back. And the gentleman, God bless him, he's still there. The owner of Damafor's Investments just came back with his finance director and stood there and looked at me, like, he was like laughing. He did not know what to say. He's like, okay, Mr. Kunaka, and that is how I became an owner of a property worth $1,078,000 back in 2012.
And how long did you have to pay that money back?
They gave me 5 years initially. So it meant I needed to pay $8,000 on average per month. But take note, this was just land. There were no buildings. There was nothing. And I had a little school in a 3-bedroomed house. And I was under that threat of, by January, unless something happens, you're going to be closed down. So what did I do? I made my way to the property, and I then hired a truck to Mr. Maplanka. I don't know if he's still there, down Samora Machel.
Along Blaue Road. Yeah, I can see.
And then I bought Mapranga. And then I took them to the property, and I did my makeshift structures out of wood so that I would move the students from the house to the school.
How many teachers do you have now?
36.
And then, how many teachers did you have?
4, including me.
So you were part and parcel of building the dream.
Absolutely, and I still am. I work full-time at my schools. I am the custodian of the strategy.
And the vision.
So to speak, yes, I am the custodian of the strategy. It doesn't matter how small the situation is. I always want to put in, to have some input also. While I respect other officers that are now there, the headmasters, the senior teachers, etc., and even a board that I have, I feel like I might as well be useful on a day-to-day.
Where did you get the funding to then buy school furniture?
Okay.
I guess after you've got the cabins, let's call them the wooden cabins,
right.
You needed to put furniture. You also needed to start working on regularization.
Correct.
Where did you get the funding?
Okay, so you see what happens is that when you are selling a service, your clients are your investors, in the sense that if you give them, or if you show that you desire to give them the best, they partner with you. So remember, I had run an ECD center back in Avondale. And Avondale is obviously a more affluent market. So I'd also partnered with distance learning, and I was already beginning to understand the needs of people like me. Remember, I said I'm a or I love the fine things. So I refined my product from Avondale. I made sure that the students learned English quickly. They learned how to read quickly. They did their sports. I would transport the students to Greendale for swimming. We did our tennis, our hockey, even as a little school without as much resources. And in the community, the school was the name quality was synonymous with actual provision of quality.
When you look back as your vision grew, when you look back now, what do you think was the driving force for you to achieve what you've achieved? And also, please share the challenges that you faced.
Okay, to start with, I told you about my mom, Mashtengesa Sadza kwa William, earlier. I also talked to you about my dad being a cook for a white couple. I think that paints a picture of poverty to some extent. Yes. So I grew up knowing that when your shoe is worn out, you don't ask. Because your mother, if she can see it, she might as well buy you. You don't ask because apana. You can see it yourself. I grew up in a scenario where you ask your mom to bk and she'll say bika isadza muriwo nchakudzai. And then later on maybe pazoitawo muna uyada kusonerwa something, and maybe something needs to be adjusted. Vaona 50 cents and emnotenga laptop. So I knew my dad would always say, I've got nothing else to give you. And my father was from Mozambique, by the way. So he spoke broken Shona. And each time he would say, Shungu chete kanandega unokwira. So I knew Kuti, you needed to be someone who's self-driven. Shungu chete kanandege chaya unokwira. Right? That's what he wanted to say. Kuti, nothing is impossible as long as you are driven towards it. So I knew the only thing that would take me out of poverty was to push myself. I only had me. I knew nobody was coming to rescue the situation. It either was going to be me or no one else. And the fact that my parents were so much into educating us, I knew probably that is where the secret lied. The success lied in being successful, first and foremost, in your education.
Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. The challenges.
So you see, Nikki, it's not all rosy being in business. You come up with a whole lot of things, starting with the operating environment itself. Let's call that our SWOT analysis, all right, if you like. The operating environment itself is such that, imagine to start with, you need 3.5 hectares to build a school. That alone is it. So there are barriers to entry. You know, I always think that sometimes, in general, world over, the scenario is like this. Picture a situation where a young girl has been impregnated by a man. She can elope, and the next thing, she's married. Right? But if a young man approaches a family and asks that family for their hand in marriage, they will charge that young man 10 cows so that they can have the same status of being married. So that is the scenario with the operating environment, whereby you want to do your thing straight up. You've got council on your back, you've got ministry on your back, you've got everybody else who is a regulated authority, be it Zimbra, be it whoever, on your back. Versus when now, especially right now, the challenge with the big schools or the established schools is that every other house is now a school, because the rules that applied to me when I was arrested for running an illegal school, etc., are no longer being held hard and fast. So I am like the young man who has come through the front door wanting to marry, versus a young man who has just impregnated your daughter and the next thing you are married. So in a nutshell, the regulatory environment, to some extent, was one of my biggest challenges. I'll tell you a story about my Marondera school.
Go ahead.
I bought land back in 2018 to build a secondary school because I knew that is where I wanted my vision to go. but this land is farmland. Regularizing that from farmland to becoming a commercial property has been a headache, because the protocol involved or the requirements are such that you have 15 offices to visit. You've got your municipal offices, you've got your council, you've got your health offices, you've got your ministry, you've got your inspection departments. There is so much involved. But then you find that they probably would come more for a school like that versus someone who's just by the corner running a little school. But someone who wants to really take a go at it. So the challenge, in short, I would say, regulatory authorities sometimes are too hard on those that come up front versus.
Now, as a woman, and we'll talk about your success trajectory, and a lot of the times people will talk about community's perception of a woman. Have you experienced any challenges?
Yes, absolutely. In two ways, if not more. I'll start by single women. You are married, and the next time you are single, there's a challenge there. Community has placed a lot of pressure on women to be married or to stay in marriages for the sake of perception. I personally experienced that. I lost my first marriage in 2015, and a successful woman who is unmarried has it, really. People have all sorts of speculation. Where is she getting the money? You buy your new dress, oh, as of you are ningi. There is this impression that as long as you are not married, then you are immoral. But that has pushed a lot of our sisters to stay in relationships that don't work. But I want to thank God that I endured a good 7 years without going through that pressure, because it was going to be easy for me to just marry the next guy. And take note, when you're also a woman who has kind of made it, there are all types, sizes, and shapes and sizes of men who come and throw themselves at you, because not for love, but maybe for the benefit that comes with whatever you've got to offer. So challenges to do with being a woman. Number one, being a single woman at some point made it really difficult for me. Maybe it became also the reason why I had to pursue a PhD, so that I'll get a title where you're confused. Is she single? Is she married?
She's now a doctor. When we talk about equality, and this is a Women's Month special. This show is a Women's Month special too. When we talk about the issues of you know what, let me not even talk about equality. Let me talk about Women's Day in itself. Women's Day's aim, one of the main aims, is to celebrate women's achievements.
Correct.
I know that you are also an ambassador for women's empowerment, and you talk about equity in a lot of the discussions that you're in a lot of the groups that you're in. And one of the challenges that has been posed is that as women, we are not able to bring out the message. We are too radical and possibly as radical feminists. I'm going to put that in quotes. The message does not then express the need for us to have inclusive dialogue with men, so that they understand the equity aspects of being of gender and how we can build together. How can we work around that?
Okay, the first thing is that we need to create platforms of discussion. Platforms of discussion are important, because you cannot just talk about empowering a woman. Empowering a woman against who? The minute we have platforms of discussion where the empowerment of a woman does not equate to disempowering men, because there's a difference there. The minute men perceive it as empowering women means disempowering men, then nobody's going to listen. So the first thing is to create platforms of discussion, because we are talking about equality, which means the same noise we make about empowerment should be the same amount of noise we make about empowering, be it a woman or be it a man.
Now, your faith, as we conclude, seems to play a very pivotal part in developing your vision and attaining your goals.
Right.
Let's talk about your faith.
Okay. You might want to know, Nikki, that when I started the ECD center, remember I was in my house in
Yes.
Avondale. But I also lost clients who did not like the fact that the school was at my house where I lived. I then decided to look elsewhere for another property that would, where I could occupy as a school. That was my first miracle. No wonder the reason why I've been holding on to faith. That is when I first saw the hand of God. I moved around Avondale looking for a property until one day I saw an ECD center literally waiting for me. It had all the drawings outside. I walked in, there was nobody. The place was absolutely empty. Can you believe that?
It was waiting for you then.
I spent a week or two going there every day. Sometimes I'll go in the morning, hoping to meet somebody, but I didn't meet anyone.
It was abandoned.
It was abandoned. So until I began to go in the night and I would see the light on, and I thought somebody should have been here. I began to leave my business cards for them to be able to call me back when they had seen my cards. But again, nothing came my way. Until eventually, what I did is I moved in. Before I moved in, I went to see my pastor. He said, Mfundisi, I keep having the same dream that says, Enda, go. And and he's like, do you want to go to UK? And I'm like, no. Because those days, everybody was going abroad. And then eventually, he said, I'm like, I'm not sure, but if I think God is saying what he's saying, I think I'm supposed to go and occupy a property somewhere. And he's like, there are laws and you're going to be caught up. And I said, look, I believe this voice strongly. Indeed, I went. I started cleaning up the place and whatnot. I did everything that anybody would do if they were at their own property. I began to own it. I began to speak that I owned the property. I began to walk around it. Then 5 days into moving in, the actual owner then came.
What was your conversation like?
You know, this guy just pulled down his window just halfway and said, I could only see his eyes at first. And he said to me, Ambuya, manga kwanene. Apa manga mapiwa nani? And I'm like, Namwari. It's like, what? No, God is in the habit of giving people property in Harare. And I said, can I talk to you? No, I want to find you gone tomorrow. I'm coming back here. I want to find you gone. And I prayed that night. I said, God, you say to me, go. Now this person saying, go. Which go should I believe? So when the guy came back the next day, he found me still there and he said, I've never seen such faith. So how much do you want to pay? So I then ran my ECD center from 2009 right up to 2013. I had deluxe nursery school and I was renting from that particular individual. And God bless them because they saw my faith. So when I was next faced with a scenario where they said, find something.
You found something.
I found something. So I want to thank God for that. And then, you see, Nikki, in 2019, I was still owing something to Dama Falls. But I told you that this God works in miraculous ways. Then the Chief Justice then made an announcement that if your debt was, it's actually, they call it statutory instrument 133, SI 133 of 2019, which states that all debts incurred on or before 19 February of 2019 shall be repayable at a rate of 1:1. That is the law. I was still owing a material sum. I had gone way past over half of my debt, but a material sum was outstanding. And again, God was extending an olive branch to me, which I took on. So I cannot talk about today owning a property with $1 million plus. Now with the developments, I'm sure if you know about investments, it's obviously worth a bit more than the $1,078,000 I bought it at. So I can safely say I own $1 million property.
Well done.
But it is all to do with faith and believing, not only in God, but believing in people, that they can see through you and they are there to assist. We've got destiny shapers. For me, Dama Force Investment is a destiny shaper. The gentleman I rented from in Avondo is a destiny shepherd. The people in Maronde are destiny shepherds. So you just need to be able to listen and hear God speak. He doesn't always do the way he did in the past, where you actually hear an actual voice. You need to be able to observe. And you need to be able to follow your instinct, because the first prophet in your life is yourself.
Yeah.
So you prophesy to yourself. You also speak things into existence. Everything hears. As I was coming, I will not lie, I was rather nervous. Then I said, God, you've put greatness in me. That which somebody has seen and wants the world to share with me. So it will not make sense for me to go and sit there. So I began to speak to me. I began to talk to myself. Maria, you've come this far.
And here you are.
Indeed.
It's been an absolute pleasure. She is an outstanding woman with a very motivating and uplifting story. It's a strong story of faith. And we thank you for being here today. Dr. Maria Mafunga Kimu. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure, Nikki. Thank you.
And that's the whole idea behind the Nikki Show. You deserve to hear stories that will give you the hope to take on another day, to conquer and to win. Until next time.
Myself doing more work, pulling much more than the others, but the others getting the glory and the salary and the car. And that was a little bit